Statements by ministers.
Madam, Mr. Speaker, sir, permit me to rise under this item on the order paper, and in my capacity as the Minister with responsibility for elections, permit me to make a few remarks as a report pertaining to the Constituency Boundaries Commission. I wish, Mr. Speaker, to inform this Honourable House that, having been guided by the Constitution of the Federation of St. Christopher and Nevis, and specifically been guided by Part 4, delimitation of constituencies, specifically Part 4, Section 49. It speaks, Mr. Speaker, to the creation of the Constituency Boundaries Commission. Mr. Speaker, if I may be allowed, with reference to the Constitution, to read the relevant section, 49.1. There shall be for St. Christopher and Nevis a Constituency Boundaries Commission, hereinafter in this section referred to as the Commission, which shall consist of a chairman appointed by the Governor-General, acting in accordance with the advice of the Prime Minister, given after the Governor-General has consulted the Leader of the Opposition and such other persons as the Governor-General, acting in his own deliberate judgment, has seen fit to consult. B. 2 members of the National Assembly, appointed by the Governor-General, acting in accordance with the advice of the Prime Minister. And C. 2 members of the Assembly, appointed by the Governor-General, acting in accordance with the advice of the Leader of the Opposition, provided that the chairman shall not be a member of the Assembly or of the Nevis Island Assembly. Mr. Speaker, being guided by that relevant section in the Constitution, I have been informed in my capacity as the Prime Minister and with Minister responsible for elections. I have been informed by His Excellency the Governor-General, after consultation that he's had with me on naming the 2 members on the government side, and also after consultation with regard to the naming of the chairman of the Commission, and having been informed by the Governor-General that the Leader of the Opposition was consulted for his 2 members and also on the appointment of the chairman of the Commission, I wish to inform this Honourable House that the Commission has been duly created according to the Constitution since last year. In fact, the 1st of August last year. Since that appointment, Mr. Speaker, of the Commission has been doing work. The members of the Commission, for the records, have been meeting under the chairmanship of Mr. Peter Jenkins. And the members on the government side, or those who had been appointed by the Governor-General after consulting with the Prime Minister, are the Honourable Dr. Earl Asim Martin, the member for Constituency St. Christopher 1, and also the Honourable Marcella Althea Liburd, the elected representative for St. Christopher 2. As I said before, Mr. Speaker, I am aware that the Commission, consisting of the Honourable Vance Amory, the Member of Parliament for Nevis 10, and Senator the Honourable Vincent Byron. He also has been appointed and is sitting as a member of the Commission under the chairmanship of Mr. Peter Jenkins, as I said before. Mr. Speaker, I believe it is important that the Commission be allowed to do its work without any unnecessary distractions. This is because, Mr. Speaker, the matter of revisiting the boundaries is of highest priority, as is being dictated by our Constitution. In fact, so high a priority it is that after independence in 1983, the boundaries were revisited during the PAM administration, and elections were subsequently held in 1984. Again, Mr. Speaker, I believe, being guided by the mandate given under the Constitution, that the boundaries be revisited every 3 to 5 years. In 1988, under the Simmons administration, under the PAM administration, the boundaries were again revisited, 1988, for the elections of March 1989. People from yesterday. Mr. Speaker, it is important for us to continue to note that in 2009, an attempt was made by this Parliament to receive the report of the Commission that was sitting at that particular time for the elections that were due and which were held eventually in 2010, January. We would recall, Mr. Speaker, for the records, that this matter became involved in the courts. And as a result of that, the elections were held without the boundaries being properly revisited, as the Constituency Boundaries Commission report, which was already in the Parliament, was really never allowed to be applied because the court had a particular matter to deal with pertaining to that report. And as a result of that, the Parliament ran out of time, so to speak, and the report was never applied to impact upon the elections of 2010 January. Mr. Speaker, I want to make it absolutely clear that ample time has been given for the revisiting of the boundaries for the elections, which are due in this Parliament by 2015 January, and maybe possibly an extension of 90 days beyond January, according to the Constitution. So maybe one could see an election being called in 2015 April. And so having been seized with this important information, the Boundaries Commission has been activated by His Excellency the Governor General since August of last year, 2012, 3 years before the elections are actually due here in St. Kitts and Nevis. I make emphasis, Mr. Speaker, with regard to the long period that has been given for the Boundaries Commission to do its work, because there was a time in our own political history, at a time when, in previous situations before, sometimes the Commission was only given a few hours to meet, to deliberate on boundary changes. And those boundary changes were actually passed in the National Assembly and applied to have effect in the elections that followed. So, Mr. Speaker, I think it is important for us to note that the Governor General, in particular His Excellency, at that time Sir Cuthbert Sebastian, had done his job quite well in ensuring that the Boundaries Commission was properly in place almost 3 years before, in order to fulfill the mandate of the Constitution that the boundaries should be revisited every 3 to 5 years. And so, Mr. Speaker, having been impacted by the constitutional mandate, the Commission was put in place by August of last year, 2012, in anticipation of the elections, the latest being April of 2015. Why do I speak at this time of the constituency boundaries, Mr. Speaker? Because, Mr. Speaker, those who have in recent times reviewed our elections, observed our elections, and reviewed the conditions and the environment under which our elections were held, have been very, very specific and instructive in indicating that apart from the constitutional dictate, from their own observation of previous elections, the boundaries needed to be revisited in anticipation of upcoming elections. Mr. Speaker, permit me yet again to make reference to a document which has been circulated to all members of Parliament in the past and circulated to the members of the Commission sitting presently. It is a report of the Commonwealth Assessment Mission that looked at the situation in St. Kitts and Nevis pertaining to electoral reform. And this report came about after an assessment mission visited from the 28th of August 2005 to September 2005. Mr. Speaker, permit me, as I said, to read from the relevant section. It says, Mr. Speaker, that Schedule 2.1 of our Elections Act, Chapter 162, states that there shall be no less than 8 constituencies in the island of St. Christopher and not less than 3 constituencies in the island of Nevis. And if the number of constituencies is increased beyond 11, not less than 1/3 shall be in the island of Nevis. I make reference to that, Mr. Speaker, because the Constituency Boundaries Commission, as it continues to do its work, as it continues to assess the situation, it will be guided by a number of basic principles which are constitutionally based. This being one of them, that the number of constituencies shall be 8 or 3 in Nevis. And if they were to be changed, there should always be a ratio where not less than 1/3 of the new number of constituencies shall be in the island of Nevis. In other words, as the Constituency Boundaries Commission does its work, it may decide to maintain the 11 constituencies, 8 in St. Kitts and 3 in Nevis, or it may decide to increase the number of constituencies. But whatever increasing it does, at the final analysis, it must be that Nevis must have at least 1/3 of the total number, because that is what the dictate of the Constitution is. Mr. Speaker, it also says to us, that is, according to the Constitution, all constituencies, and I quote here, all constituencies shall contain as nearly equal number of inhabitants. And I want to stress that, Mr. Speaker. I want to stress that inhabitants, not electors, not voters, but inhabitants. All constituencies shall contain as nearly equal number of inhabitants as appear to the Constituency Boundaries Commission to be reasonably practical. So yet again, another dictate from the Constitution is that the number of residents in each constituency must be as near equal as possible. And the Commission is bounded by this, because the Constitution says that the Commission must, in its own judgment, as it sees reasonably practical, to bring about as nearly equal number of inhabitants as possible within each constituency. Mr. Speaker, that particular report that I made reference to a while ago, it went on to state the following. In the 2004 election, constituency number 2 in St. Kitts had 6,000 voters on the register, followed by constituencies 1 and 8 with over 5,000 voters on the register. But that is all the way back in 2004, Mr. Speaker. I am sure my colleagues here have the current numbers. I am sure that they have the current numbers. I know, but I'm just saying what the report said. Because if it speaks to voters, then it speaks to inhabitants. Because if it speaks to voters, it speaks to inhabitants or others who may not be resident in the constituency, but who are, however, registered to vote in that particular constituency. Mr. Speaker, I want to leave that point. The point I want to make is that if we were to look at the statistics that have been recently provided from the census, we would recognize that there is great disparity in numbers with regard to the inhabitants in each particular constituency. And that disparity is shown not only in the island of St. Kitts, but the disparity speaks also to the island of Nevis. Mr. Speaker, what it means, therefore, is that the Constituency Boundaries Commission has a lot of work to do. And I want to commend it, Mr. Speaker, for starting its work early, because I believe by starting its work early, it would have time to do a proper analysis, determining, firstly, whether there would be an increase in the number of constituencies from 11 to whatever number, ensuring that whatever the final number is, a third of those constituencies must reside in Nevis. And secondly, it has a task, Mr. Speaker, to try to respond positively to the guidance that has been provided by the Constitution, and that is, it must try to have, at the end of the day, as near equal as possible the number of inhabitants in each constituency, thus fulfilling the mandate and guidance of our Constitution. I wish, Mr. Speaker, on behalf of this Honourable House, I wish the Chairman and the members of the Commission successful deliberation as they continue to carry out a critically important constitutional exercise that has been given to them by the Governor-General, acting in his capacity as head of state, and in response, of course, to the mandate being given to him under the Constitution of St. Kitts-Nevis to ensure that good governance principles are adhered to, especially in the electoral process and system here in St. Kitts-Nevis. May it please you, Mr. Speaker, for those words.